The world we live in has a long story. This story is human history. Many things have shaped this story. Leaders, ideas, and inventions all played a part. But one factor is often overlooked. This factor is geography. The land itself has been a powerful force. It has guided how people live. It has decided where cities grow. It has even influenced who wins wars. Geography is the stage on which history unfolds. The mountains, rivers, oceans, and climates are not just backdrops. They are active players in the human drama. Understanding history means understanding geography. The physical features of our planet matter greatly. Think about where the first civilizations began. They often started in river valleys. These rivers provided water for drinking. They supplied water for farming. The soil near rivers was usually very fertile. This allowed people to grow more food. More food meant larger populations could be supported. This simple fact of geography helped societies to grow and become complex. Without these helpful geographic features, human history would look very different. Mountains are some of the Earth's most dramatic features. They rise high above the surrounding land. For early human societies, mountains played many roles. Sometimes they were like giant walls. They offered protection from enemies. People could build settlements in high valleys. These settlements were easier to defend. The steep slopes and narrow passes made it difficult for invaders to attack. This security allowed communities to develop in relative peace. Mountains could guard cultures. However, this protection also came with a cost. The same mountains that kept enemies out also kept others away. This led to isolation. Ideas and technologies from other places spread more slowly into mountainous regions. Communities living there often developed very distinct cultures. Their languages, customs, and beliefs might be very different from those in the flatlands nearby. The Himalayas in Asia are a good example. They separated India from China, leading to very different cultural paths for these great civilizations. Their height made large-scale interaction difficult for centuries. Rivers were like lifelines for early civilizations. Many of the world's first great societies grew up along major rivers. Think of the Nile in Egypt, or the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia. The Indus River in ancient India also supported a large population. These rivers provided a reliable source of fresh water. This water was essential for drinking. It was also vital for irrigating crops. Farming became much more productive near these rivers. This allowed people to settle down and build villages, then towns, and eventually cities. Besides water and fertile soil, rivers offered another key advantage. They were natural highways. Boats could travel up and down rivers. This made it easier to transport goods and people. Trade could flourish along river routes. Ideas could also spread from one settlement to another. Rivers connected communities rather than isolating them like some mountain ranges did. The flow of the river often dictated the direction of early expansion and influence. The control of these waterways often meant control over the region's prosperity and power. Coastlines are where the land meets the sea. These areas have always been important for human societies. Access to the sea opened up many opportunities. People living near coasts could harvest food from the ocean. Fish, shellfish, and other marine life became important parts of their diet. This was especially true in places where farming was difficult. The sea also offered a different kind of highway. It was a vast network for travel and trade. Coastal communities often became centers for maritime activity. Societies with long coastlines and good harbors often developed strong seafaring traditions. Think of the ancient Greeks or the Vikings. The sea allowed them to explore new lands. It enabled them to establish colonies. It helped them trade with distant peoples. This exchange brought wealth, new goods, and new ideas. However, coastlines could also be vulnerable. They were open to attack from sea raiders or invading navies. So coastal settlements often needed strong defenses. Their relationship with the sea was one of both opportunity and risk. Vast, open plains also shaped human history in profound ways. Unlike rugged mountains, plains were relatively easy to cross. This made them ideal for the movement of people and animals. Nomadic groups often roamed large plains, following herds of animals. When humans began to practice agriculture on a larger scale, fertile plains became very valuable. The steppes of Eurasia are a great example. These wide grasslands allowed for the development of horse cultures. These cultures could move quickly across huge distances. Plains also made it easier for large empires to form and expand. armies could move more easily across open terrain. It was harder for small groups to hide or resist a powerful, organized force. Empires like the Roman Empire or the Mongol Empire were able to conquer and control vast territories that included extensive plains. These flatlands were also good for large-scale farming, which could support the large populations and armies needed by an empire. The geography of plains often favored centralization of power and the growth of large states. Climate is the long-term pattern of weather in a particular area. It includes temperature, rainfall, wind, and seasons. Climate has had a massive influence on how and where humans live. Our bodies are adapted to certain temperature ranges. Very hot or very cold climates present big challenges for survival. Early humans, like all species, sought out environments where they could thrive. This meant places with enough water, food sources, and temperatures that were not too extreme. These factors dictated early migration patterns across the globe. Different climates support different types of vegetation and animal life. Tropical climates with warm temperatures and high rainfall often have dense rainforests. These forests are rich in biodiversity. Temperate climates with moderate temperatures and distinct seasons are often good for growing a variety of crops. Arid climates with very little rainfall lead to deserts. Polar climates are extremely cold, with ice and snow covering the land. Each of these climate zones presented unique opportunities and challenges for human societies that chose to live there. The Earth's climate has not always been stable. It has changed many times throughout history. There have been ice ages when large parts of the planet were covered in glaciers. There have also been warmer periods. These climate shifts had huge impacts on human populations. During ice ages, sea levels dropped, creating land bridges that allowed people to migrate to new continents. For example, humans likely crossed from Asia to North America via a land bridge over the Bering Strait. When temperatures warmed, these ice sheets melted and sea levels rose again. Climate also affects human health and disease. Some diseases thrive in particular climatic conditions. For example, malaria is common in warm, humid regions where mosquitoes, which carry the parasite, can flourish. Changes in climate can alter the geographic range of such diseases. Understanding these connections between climate and human life is crucial. It helps us see how deeply intertwined our history is with the environmental conditions of our planet. Our ancestors constantly adapted to these changing conditions. Section 5. Farming and frost adapting to Earth's moods. The development of agriculture was a major turning point in human history. It allowed people to produce their own food. This meant they could settle in one place. But farming is heavily dependent on climate. Different crops need different conditions to grow. Some crops, like wheat and barley, grow well in temperate climates with moderate rainfall. Other crops, like rice, need warmer temperatures and a lot of water. This is why rice farming became so important in parts of Asia with monsoon climates. The length of the growing season is also critical. This is the period of the year when temperatures are warm enough for plants to grow. In regions with long, cold winters, the growing season is short. This limits the types of crops that can be cultivated. Farmers in these areas had to develop hardy crop varieties. They also had to find ways to store food for the winter months. In contrast, regions closer to the equator might have multiple growing seasons per year. This allowed for more continuous food production if water was available. Climate also dictates the availability of water for agriculture. Rainfall patterns are very important. Some regions receive consistent rainfall throughout the year. Other regions have distinct wet and dry seasons. Societies in areas with unreliable rainfall had to develop irrigation systems. The ancient Egyptians built canals to bring water from the Nile to their fields. This was a major feat of engineering. It allowed them to farm successfully in a desert environment. Droughts or long periods without rain could be catastrophic for agricultural societies. Extreme weather events, also linked to climate and geography, further shaped human adaptation. Floods could destroy crops and settlements, but also deposit fertile silt. Frosts could kill young plants, ruining a harvest. Monsoons, while bringing needed rain, could also cause devastating floods if they were too intense. Societies had to learn to predict these patterns. They developed calendars and agricultural techniques to cope with the whims of their local climate. This constant adaptation was a key driver of innovation and social organization. To Section 6. Earth's gifts, resources, and riches. Natural resources are materials found in nature that humans can use. These resources have played a huge role in determining the wealth and power of different societies. Some of the most important resources include fertile land for farming, water for drinking and irrigation, and forests for timber and fuel. Societies that had abundant access to these basic resources were often able to support larger populations. They could also develop more complex economies. Control over these resources was often a source of prosperity. Beyond these basic needs, other resources became valuable as technology developed. Minerals like copper, tin, iron, gold, and silver were very important. Copper and tin could be combined to make bronze. Bronze was used for tools and weapons. This gave societies in the Bronze Age a big advantage. Later, iron became even more important. It was stronger and more common than bronze. Societies that had access to iron ore and the knowledge to work it often became dominant military and economic powers. The location of these resources was not uniform across the globe. Some regions were rich in certain minerals, other regions had very few. This uneven distribution had major consequences. It often led to trade between regions. People would exchange goods they had for resources they lacked. It also led to conflict. Groups might fight for control of valuable resource-rich areas. The desire for gold, silver, and spices, for example, was a major driver of European exploration and colonization in later centuries. Access to energy resources also became increasingly important. Wood was an early fuel source. Later, coal became vital for powering the Industrial Revolution. More recently, oil and natural gas have become dominant energy sources. The geographic location of these fossil fuels has shaped global politics and economies in the modern era. Countries with large reserves of oil, for example, often have significant international influence. The quest for resources continues to be a powerful force in world history, driving innovation, trade, and sometimes war. Section 7. Charting courses, geography, trade, and discovery. Trade has always been a powerful engine of change in human history. It allows for the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies between different groups of people. Geography played a critical role in shaping trade routes. Natural pathways like rivers, seas, and ocean currents often determined how goods were transported. Mountain passes were crucial for overland trade routes like the Silk Road that connected east and west. The difficulty of the terrain dictated the cost and speed of trade. Oceans and seas opened up possibilities for long-distance trade. Coastal civilizations with good harbors and shipbuilding skills often became major trading hubs. The Mediterranean Sea, for example, was a bustling center of trade for ancient civilizations like the Phoenicians, Greeks, and Romans. They exchanged goods like olive oil, wine, pottery, and metals. The invention of better ships and navigation techniques allowed traders to venture further. Understanding winds and currents like the monsoon winds in the Indian Ocean was essential for successful maritime trade. The desire for valuable goods from distant lands often spurred voyages of exploration. European explorers in the 15th and 16th centuries were looking for new sea routes to Asia. They wanted to access spices, silks, and other luxury items directly. This age of discovery was heavily influenced by geography. Explorers had to navigate vast, unknown oceans. They faced challenges like storms, difficult currents, and the sheer distance involved. Their knowledge of geography, however imperfect, guided their journeys. These voyages of exploration led to new connections between continents. They also led to the mapping of the world. This increased geographical knowledge, in turn, facilitated more trade and further exploration. However, these new connections also had negative consequences. They led to colonization and the exploitation of resources and people in newly discovered lands. The geographic advantages of some nations, combined with technological advancements, allowed them to project their power across the globe, reshaping global trade networks and political landscapes. As Section 8. Battlegrounds and borders, geography in conflict. War and conflict have been constant features of human history. Geography has always played a crucial role in how wars are fought and who wins them. The physical landscape can offer significant advantages or disadvantages to armies. Mountains, for example, can act as natural defenses. They can also be difficult terrain for armies to cross. The narrow pass at Thermopylae in ancient Greece allowed a small Spartan force to hold off a much larger Persian army for a time. This is a classic example of using geography for defense. Rivers can also be important strategic features. They can serve as defensive barriers, making it harder for an enemy to attack. They can also be supply lines for armies. Control of major rivers has often been a key objective in military campaigns. Similarly, control of strategic choke points like narrow straits or mountain passes can give one side a major advantage. The Dardanelles Strait, connecting the Mediterranean to the Black Sea, has been fought over for centuries because of its strategic importance for naval passage and trade. Climate and weather can also greatly influence military operations. Invading Russia has proven difficult for many armies, partly due to its vast size and harsh winters. Napoleon's army and later Hitler's forces suffered greatly from the Russian winter. Naval warfare is obviously dependent on seas and oceans. Control of sea lanes has been vital for projecting power and maintaining trade during wartime. Islands can serve as important naval bases. Great Britain's island geography helped protect it from invasion for centuries and allowed it to build a powerful navy. The desire to control strategically important geographic locations or resource-rich territories has often been a cause of war. Borders between nations are frequently defined by geographical features like rivers or mountain ranges. However, these borders can also be sources of dispute if they are not clearly defined or if resources straddle the boundary. Thus, geography not only influences how wars are fought, but also why they are fought. Understanding the strategic landscape is essential for military planners and for understanding the course of many historical conflicts. Section 9. Conclusion. Our world shaped by the land. Throughout this exploration, we have seen the profound and constant influence of geography on human history. It is not merely a passive backdrop. Instead, the Earth's physical features, its climates, and its resources have actively shaped the human story, from the earliest settlements in fertile river valleys to the globalized world of today. Geography has guided where people live, what they eat, how they trade, and even how they fight their wars. It has presented both opportunities and challenges that humanity has constantly adapted to. Natural landscapes like mountains, rivers, plains, and coastlines directed the growth of civilizations. Mountains offered protection but also isolation. Rivers provided water, food, and transport, becoming cradles of early societies. Plains allowed for easy movement and the expansion of empires, while coastlines opened doors to maritime trade and exploration. Each type of landscape encouraged different ways of life, different forms of social organization, and different pathways of cultural development. The very ground beneath our feet has dictated so much of our collective journey. Climate, with its variations in temperature and rainfall, has been another powerful geographic force. It determined where agriculture could flourish and what types of crops could be grown. This, in turn, influenced population density and the complexity of societies. Humans have shown remarkable ingenuity in adapting to diverse and changing climates, from the frozen Arctic to the scorching deserts. The availability of natural resources, unevenly distributed across the globe, further steered economic development, fueled trade, and unfortunately sometimes sparked conflict as nations vied for control of valuable materials. In conclusion, the story of humanity is inextricably linked to the geography of our planet. While human agency, ideas, and innovations are crucial drivers of history, they always operate within a geographical context. The land shapes us, and we in turn shape the land. Recognizing the deep impact of geography allows us to understand the past more fully. It also helps us appreciate the complex interplay of forces that continue to shape our present and will undoubtedly influence our future on this diverse and dynamic Earth. The lessons of geography are timeless.